Hey, did you know that 2/3 of men, according to a recent study, expect some irritation when they shave? If you were born after 1970, there's a good chance your first razor was a multi-blade razor. They have been the status quo for over 50 years. And where has it gotten us? Nowhere. Over 2 billion plastic razors entered the landfill each year in the U.S. alone. More and more people are opting to either stop shaving, or explore other more invasive hair removal methods. Well, that's why Henson Shaving wants to change the shaving industry. Not through gimmicks like subscriptions or moisturizing strips, but through groundbreaking research on the impact shaving has on your skin. And here's the dirty secret about shaving. The razors, they're all just as sharp, the actual blades. The whole key is the distance of the razor from the blade from the actual razor housing, because otherwise it starts to bounce like a diving board. Henson has makes their razors in their aerospace machine shop in Canada that made parts for the Mars rover and the International Space Station. Their machinists are obviously extremely good at machinery and manufacturing, and very precise. 0.0013. That's the distance that the blade is out from the razor on a Henson shaver. These shavers are really beautiful. They feel nice in your hand. They will last you a lifetime. And here's the beauty of this, and this could only happen in Canada. They made a great razor, not necessarily a great razor business. So once you buy the razor, it's going to cost you $3 to $5 a year to continue to use that with new blades, because they don't use those proprietary blades. They just use those old-timey, what do you call it? Just the razor.
Straight
blade.
razors, yeah.
Yeah,
razor
dual edge. It's a fantastic gift for, really anybody who shaves.
I've been shaving a lot more lately because I switched to a Henson shaving.
Oh my gosh, look at you.
Look at how smooth that shave
very
is.
smooth. For me, right here and right here, I never even use any shaving cream. But if you do, it is time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that's going to last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/Sam. Pick the razor you want and use the code SAM, S-A-M, to get a free shaving cream with your razor. Just make sure you add it to your cart and it will be free. Enjoy. Believe me, you will. And now for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ukraine fires U.S.-made missiles into Russia for the first time. Meanwhile, Matt Gaetz accusations hacked as Trump vows to build out a full sexual assaulting cabinet. DNC chair race heats up as a new report shows Rahm Emanuel made some dubious stock trades while working for the government.
Liz Cheney for DNC chair it is.
Republicans stall as Democrats in Senate try and push to confirm more judges. Meanwhile, Republicans in the House push to ban transgender women from Capitol bathrooms. Senate to vote tomorrow on blocking some arms sales to Israel. Looters steal aid from 100 trucks in Israeli-controlled Gazan territory. Musk and Bezos head to venue-shopped Fifth Circuit to challenge the existence of the National Labor Relations Board. And H.R. 9495, the so-called terrorist financing bill pushed by AIPAC, which will target all and any nonprofits, is up for a vote tomorrow in the House. And then we'll be talking to Tyler Vasseur, shop steward with the National Association of Letter Carriers, Branch 9, who are organizing against an insulting 1.3% pay raise deal. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is
Newsday Tuesday.
Newsday Tuesday. Yes, we can say that with confidence. We don't. It's not as sort of loaded as
Exactly right.
Fun Day Monday now.
We don't want to gaslight the public.
That's right. We will get back to our regularly scheduled Fun Day Mondays. We're just not sure when yet. Thank you for that, Matt.
Right.
Matt noticed my sort of like OCD when it came to the borders not lining up, and he just shifted the camera.
I mean, don't point it out, but there is one part that's still not
It's a work in progress.
Yeah. No, just Sam, just don't look. Close your put your
What
computer
did I
screen
just
on
do
dark.
with my sound sheet? Oh, great. I can't find my sound sheet now. What did I just do with that? Oh,
I have it in front of me if you need
yes.
some
Well,
assistance.
oh my gosh. Let's go right into this. There's a couple of things that are going to happen over the next, I guess, 6 weeks or so. One is that the Senate hopefully will rush to confirm as many judges as possible, and hopefully also confirm one more member of the National Labor Relations Board. So theoretically, they'd be able to stay until 2016.
26.
20. Yes. Geez, I'm sorry. Yep. It's one of those weeks. 2026. And the other thing that we're going to be doing is talking about a couple of votes that are going to take place over the next couple of days, and maybe a couple more in the lame duck. There's not going to be a lot of things that are happening over that time. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about is going to be the attempt by the incoming Trump administration to get all of their nominees to either sail through the Senate or sail around the Senate. And one of those people is Matt Gaetz. And what's amazing to me is we're starting to hear more. Obviously, there's this report. There's going to be a vote. Is it tomorrow? Is it tomorrow that they're going to vote as to whether to release the report in the House Judiciary?
Yes.
In the House Ethics. Yep. And who knows how that vote is going to go. My guess is they will vote not to release it because in the future, maybe some of them have a report they don't want released, and it will get out. Like even now, we're hearing reports as to what happened, and largely it's around eyewitness accounts of Gaetz at a party having sex with an underage girl, and rampant drug use. Very little talk about Pete Hegseth's, I think, even more damning, frankly, potential rape accusation that is out there. But this is the cabinet that Donald Trump wants to assemble. And the real question is going to be, is he going to go around the process? But here is Mike Johnson talking about the Gaetz report.
And I don't think the committee should make that decision
because I don't want to open that Pandora's box. We're in a different era, okay? If there was a breach of this in the past, so be it. But now we live in the age of the 24-hour news cycle. Now we live in the age of social media. The politics and the dynamics are very different. And I would be concerned about opening the Pandora's box of saying that the House Ethics Committee, with its vast resources and unlimited power, effectively, could investigate private citizens and release reports about them. I don't think we want to go down that road. And I think it's an important principle for us to maintain.
Has Trump or any of his advisors urged you to take this position?
No, I have not discussed the ethics report with President Trump. And as you know, I spent a lot of time with him.
He's not.
He was
discussed it.
hanging out with him at a wrestling match or a MMA fight the other night.
I know. Yeah. I was surprised he was able to go, but because there was at least one woman in the audience. Tulsi Gabbard was there, but I guess I don't know how that works with these religious fundamentalists, because his wife, I don't think, was around. Maybe, in the locker room or something.
I'm sorry. The argument that he hasn't had time to talk to Donald Trump about it is laughable. But that is Mike Johnson essentially threatening other members of the House, like, hey, if we can release this on Gates after he leaves, I mean, it means that other people might not be able to escape any type of accountability if they do something wrong just by resigning from the House. And so that the opportunity is going to be foreclosed for you. And, maybe the real problem is that Gates just didn't have a son who would in some way inhibit his activities by shutting down his Chrome browser in some fashion. Incidentally, apparently, according to reports, the Venmo payments to these 17-year-old girls, incidentally, went through the guy that Gates claims is his adopted son or something.
Nestor.
Yeah, just a little bit of a
story?
twist there that makes it a little bit more intriguing.
And apparently he announced to the press that Nestor was his adopted son 2 days prior to his alleged co-conspirator being basically named in public in that investigation. So it seems like suspicious timing to proclaim someone who was at least maybe sending payments for you to underage girls, that boy is your son. Sounds more like your connection to underage girls. I don't know.
Tucker Carlson had Gates and Nestor on to talk about how beautiful their relationship is.
I wonder if what the rules are. Maybe somebody on the IM can tell me what the rules are for children testifying against their parents. Is there any type of
that could be relevant,
because you're not you can't be forced to testify against a spouse. I don't know what that is in terms of kids, but I wouldn't be terribly surprised.
Giuliani should have adopted Trump.
He should have. I can't. Does that affect attorney-client privilege? So many layers to this. I can't tell if Trump is appointing accused rapists as the first order thing, or if he feels like to just be like, hell yeah, this is the campaign I ran. I showed that dumb lady and abortion rights no more, and all those manosphere folks, I've got your back, buddy, Elon Musk and all. Or it's probably a little of that and more of, if they are in a precarious situation, like have a pending accusation against them, it gives me more leverage over them to do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah, and here's how it could go down in terms of a recess appointments. As you know, the Senate Democrats would have the ability to filibuster a Trump nominees. Generally, senators acquiesce and say, the guy won, he can get his appointments unless they're egregiously unqualified. For instance, like Gates, who's barely a lawyer, being head of the DOJ and is up on has been investigated for these type of activities. Or someone like Hegseth, who in his wildest roofie-inspired dreams could never have imagined that he would ever be appointed anything remotely close to the Secretary of Defense because it's so outlandish.
Maybe like the local chapter of his Proud Boys of a Proud Boys organization, but that's, I think, was probably as high as his ambitions might have been.
Or let's say RFK, who is an anti-vaxxer, being in charge of the CDC. I mean, all of these things are fantastical in many respects. And so it is, in my opinion, very likely that Trump is going to appoint those that he gets word from the Senate can't pass through the Senate in terms of like Republican votes. And here's how it could go down. Now, remember, if you get a recess appointment, it only lasts for 2 years, or really until the next Senate elections, and the next one are in 2026. And you cannot be paid. But if you have, let's say, a bunch of billionaires hanging around, I'm sure there's a way to get around that, sell a watch or something to somebody for a lot of money. This is how it would work. The Senate has to be adjourned for 10 actual days. The Senate has to vote a 50-vote majority to adjourn. It's a privileged motion. So it comes first in line, and it doesn't require a 2/3 majority. There's no way to filibuster this. Now, if the Senate doesn't want to do it because they seem like they want to pretend like they actually are senators and they're not going to kowtow to anybody, the other way that it can happen is that Mike Johnson gets his House to adjourn. And if the Senate does not take up this measure, it is arguable, but I'm sure Donald Trump will just blow through it, that Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution, when there is a disagreement in adjournment between the House and the Senate, the president can call for an adjournment. Now, that would force the Senate to adjourn, but the Senate could come back within a day if they wanted, as long as they adjourn. They don't have to adjourn for 10 days. They will not do that. They will pretend like it's out of their hands. They will acquiesce to Donald Trump because that's what he wants them to do, and that's what they're trained to do. And I think all of these nominees are going to sail through. I think it has as much to do with Donald Trump wanting these nominees, because again, these are people who, the vast majority of them, realize they have absolutely no business being even close to what they're nominated for, and they owe it all to one person, and that is Donald Trump. And that's what he wants. He wants total fealty from these people. He wants absolutely zero resistance, zero fealty to the Constitution, zero fealty to institutional norms, zero fealty to the concerns of the party, zero fealty to anyone but him. And I think that's why he's going to do it. He's going to show the Senate, I'm going to do this whether you want or not. And it's just one more way to sort of train them to acquiesce to his power. I mean, we talk about this yesterday. We see this everywhere.
Yeah.
Saw this with, Joe Scarborough.
But these are so egregious. Like, I understand. I think you're probably right. But maybe Gates is the sacrificial guy that they put out there so they can get everyone else through. I mean, it's like he's the most hated Republican by Republicans who's not named Ted Cruz. I just can't think of anybody they definitely hate him more than Cruz. And if Trump not being able to run in 28, at least for now, like, does that change the calculation? I don't know if I'm just trying to find a glimmer of hope in this situation, or if it's hope against hope, but like there's a chance. Gates seems like it's going to be a bit of a tough hill to climb, but then maybe he'll just do the recess thing. And like, I don't know if Thune and those Republican senators who think more highly of themselves than the House Republicans who just kind of follow suit will bristle at their authority being kind of questioned in this way, or them being humiliated like this.
Oh, they'll bristle, but they're going to say, "Oh, the House is adjourned. The president has said his constitutional authority exists under Article 2, and there's nothing we can do about it. But in fact, there is something they could do about it if they wanted. People should be aware, and you may be right. You may be right. But
I have no idea. Yeah.
And I know that you're trying not to get involved in bets these days. But
that's why I said I've got no opinion on the matter of how it'll show.
Me having an opinion on a future outcome? No, couldn't be me.
That's the old me. That's the old me.
Well, we'll see. But I just want people to be aware of how this could go down, and the Senate has the ability, even in that situation where Trump invokes a constitutional authority, they have the ability to stand up. Do not let them get away with, at the very least, pretending that it's out of their control. Watch this very carefully. It's really important to sort of measure what's going to happen. All right. A couple words from our sponsor. In a couple of minutes, we're going to be talking to Tyler Vasseur. This has been ongoing at the post office. There are 3 or 4 unions. I think 4 unions in total that involve the post office. 2 letter carrier unions. One of them has been in negotiations for multiple years, and what they've won through these negotiations seems incredibly anemic. And there's an attempt to sort of like create a reform movement in this letter carrier association. We'll talk to him in a moment about this. I've mentioned to you that, one of the ways that I get through my week, particularly when I have my kids, or my kid, I guess, I'm half an empty nester, is I try not to have to kill myself to cook, but I want to occasionally, once or twice a week, show a model for my son that, home cooked meals. And the easiest way for me to do that, and the way to do it with the best food, is HelloFresh. HelloFresh makes mealtime nearly hassle-free. Has delicious, home-delivered, chef-crafted recipes that come together quickly and are less expensive than takeout. Want to thank HelloFresh for supporting the Majority Report and for allowing me to make a home-cooked meal a couple of times a week for my kid. And here's an offer from HelloFresh. Get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free-majority. Doesn't matter whether you're craving hearty comfort food, trying to please picky eaters, or looking for a calorie-smart meal plan, HelloFresh has all those options and more available on a rotating menu of 50 recipes to choose from every week. It's pretty crazy. I did I guess I went on a sort of a, I don't know, sort of a Chinese food bend. I used to work at a Chinese restaurant years and years ago, but I made a mushu pork bowl, and I made some hoisin turkey tacos. And here's the dirty little secret. It took me about 20 minutes. 20 minutes each, and home cooked meal. And Saul's actually now at the age where spices, and he's more interested in different types of food. And so this is a win-win for everybody in the house. You can customize recipes, so each meal is just the way that you like it. For instance, Saul doesn't like cilantro, so I leave the cilantro out for him. There are always options available to trade or upgrade proteins or swap out side dishes. Plus, you can check out HelloFresh's market for over 100 add-on items like dessert, quick breakfast, snacks, a lot more. This month, they have Thanksgiving items, so you can wow the folks at your Thanksgiving dinner without having to do as much work. Get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free-majority. Applied across 7 boxes. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/free-majority. Also, one other thing that, I don't know, I relate insurance to my kids, but there's a lot of stuff, obviously, these days that are out of your control. One thing you can regain control of is your family's financial future with life insurance through SelectQuote. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers. They have nearly 40 years of experience. I think they're the oldest brokers, or at least I think so, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Don't hold me to that, but that's a long time. I don't know if there's other ones out there. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Have you ever worried about getting coverage with a pre-existing health condition? SelectQuote partners and carriers that provide policies for a variety of health conditions. If you got high blood pressure, no problem. If you got diabetes, that's fine too. If you have heart disease, SelectQuote partners with carriers that can cover these conditions and others. Or if you don't have any major health issues, they work with carriers that can get you same-day coverage with no medical exam required. Head to SelectQuote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. I will tell you this. When my first kid was born, I got some term life insurance. And when my second one was, I got some term life insurance just to get past their early 20s essentially. And it is honestly, it is incredibly important to do for your family, but it also is just makes you feel, you don't feel like there's something nagging over your head. And this makes it really easy to do. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/majority. Go to SelectQuote.com/majority today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/majority. Okay, let's go into, I just want to make sure that we flag this. Tomorrow, the Senate is voting to block some arms sales to Israel. Let's God, where did my sound sheet go?
I have
new
it here,
senator
so.
from New Jersey. Let's play this clip that is happening. Remember, there was a 30-day deadline for the U.S. to assess whether Israel, not to assess. The 30-day deadline was set because the U.S. said Israel is not in compliance with its own laws, U.S. laws, saying that you cannot inhibit humanitarian aid and get arms sales. And then the U.S. just sort of blew off their own metrics that were written in this letter, saying that there had to be almost, I think it was 350 trucks a day. There hasn't been anything close to 350 trucks a day. And Israel is sending them in to areas which Israel controls, but is allowing essentially, criminals, for lack of a better term, to hijack these trucks very conveniently, I should say. But here is, what number is this?
9.
Here is...
His name's George Hemley. He's basically the interim senator from New Jersey until Andy Kim is going to take over in January. But this is Menendez's seat he had to give up.
Yes. Here's what he had to say. This is yesterday.
About what is causing the scale of suffering in Gaza and the West Bank and why we are seemingly unable to alleviate it in any significant way. These questions are not abstract. They stem from what I have seen and heard with my own eyes and ears during a recent official trip to Jordan to assess the state of humanitarian assistance in Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon. What I saw was this. There is a de facto blockade of even the most basic aid supplies getting through Karim Shalom crossing, the only viable point of entrance for aid to Gaza and the West Bank. This blockade has severely restricted the amount of aid to make it to the desperate Palestinians whose lives literally depend on it. Just today, it was reported that nearly 100 trucks transporting life-saving aid were violently looted at gunpoint, adding yet another unique challenge to getting aid to civilians. The effects of this choke point have resulted in other absurd outcomes. I recently toured warehouses, including one that U.S. Secretary of State Blinken toured himself, stocked to the very brim, particularly practically overflowing with life-saving aid supplies. This blockade has prevented the safe transport of those supplies into Gaza and the West Bank, where just miles away, women, children, and families are literally starving. These are pallets upon pallets of food, medication, pillows, latrines, and winterized tents to keep families warm as winter sets in. All of it just sitting there because of a man-made blockade. What I heard was this. I met with medical surgeons and doctors of the Jordanian Armed Forces serving in Gaza, who recounted harrowing stories of amputations on children, futile attempts to keep the malnourished alive, and operations in makeshift tents under live fire and drone strikes. These frontline providers, heroes, told me the number of partially operational hospitals are resorting to using everyday materials, like sewing thread for clothes, to stitch up patients after surgeries because they have run out of appropriate medical supplies. That should appall every one of us.
I just gotta say, he's from my hometown and went to high school in my hometown, smaller town in New Jersey. Represent, because like he only has 2 months left and is using this as an opportunity to be on the right side of history. So credit to George Hemley there.
Where is the guy from the ADL and AIPAC to say that this guy's anti-Semitic?
Yeah.
I would imagine that's going to be a following. So there is a vote tomorrow, a resolution of disapproval that is filed by Bernie Sanders. I think Van Hollen has said that he's going to vote for it. It sure sounds like Helmy will vote for it.
Warren, Van Hollen, it's Bernie's resolution. And the big thing that changed is that J Street is sending out, like, J Street, not in terms of the power that AIPAC has, right? But a lot of, you'll see similar talking points sometimes from Democrats, and it's usually because J Street sent them guidance. Like, AIPAC does that for Democrats and all Republicans. But the fact that they're saying it's time to vote yes on this is actually maybe good news for the vote total on the Democrat side. It still won't be enough, but
yeah, I welcome the help and them joining the chorus, but it's despicable it's taken them this long, frankly.
Totally agree.
And this was an organization that I was pretty excited about. I don't know, whatever it was, 10, 12 years ago when it launched. And in the most crucial moment, it failed to do what it should have done. But nevertheless, the more voices who can support this. So you have two jobs today. One, call your senator, tell them to vote in favor of Sanders' resolution of disapproval. And then two, that HR 9495, the so-called terrorist financing the bill, it basically says that the Treasury Department can decide unilaterally, without explanation, without any criteria, that a nonprofit organization is supportive of terrorist actions and strip them of their nonprofit status. Now, this is a bill that has been pushed by AIPAC as a way of undermining and smearing any type of organization. It could be, it could be, if not now, it could be J Street. It could really, it could be a lot of these organizations.
Human Rights Watch, yeah.
Human Rights Watch. It could be any of them. But this is an AIPAC push bill. It has come up for a vote before. It was a special session when it came up before, about a week ago, I guess it was, and it needed a 2/3 majority. It did not get it. They have now pushed it through committee, and it's coming to the floor tomorrow, and all it needs is a simple majority. There were 50 Democrats who voted for this. It is basically, I would say, you could probably overlay an AIPAC donation list and lay it perfectly over this list.
Or you could just send it straight to Justice Democrats about who were primarying in 2020.
One could hope. but I'm going to read off these 50 names. But call your Congress people regardless, whoever it is, and tell them to vote against 9495. Allred, Budzinski, Carvillo, Case, Castor in Florida, Costa, Craig, Cuellar, Davids in Kansas, Davis in North Carolina, Dingell, Lois Frankel, Golden in Maine, Gonzalez, Gottheimer, Harder in California, Hayes, Hoyer, Kaptur, Landsman, Lee in Nevada, Levin, Manning, McBath, Mang, Moore in Wisconsin, Moskowitz, Mervan, Norcross, Pallone, Panetta, Pappas, Perez, Ryan, Pat Ryan, Schiff, Schneider, Scholten, Schreier, Sherman, Slotkin, Sorensen, Stanton, Stevens, Strickland, Swazi, Sykes, Thanader, Torres in California, and Torres in New York, of course, Vargas, Vasquez, and Wasserman Schultz. Call them because in the hands of, in the main, this is a bad bill. You should have to have a criteria when you determine and call an organization a terrorist sympathizing organization. There is no criteria. It's simply a determination made by Treasury. And understand, these Democrats are handing this power to Donald Trump to go after any nonprofit, Planned Parenthood. Name it. And they're going after it. So call your Congress people and your Senate today. Do it now. If you have to stop listening to the show, do it now. We'll put both of the switchboard numbers. Bradley, can you put those in the YouTube and podcast descriptions? Put them up now. Maybe even put them on the screen for a minute and call while you listen to the show. It'll take you 1 second to do it, honestly. Do we have those numbers?
We put this up earlier, but I'll zoom in on it again.
Okay.
That is alternative. You may phone the United States Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. Switchboard operator will connect you directly with the Senate office you request.
And it's the same phone number for the House as well.
That's the same house. So 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. Call, ask for your senator first, and then your Congress person, regardless of what party they're in. I do not think, somebody had asked, could Treasury theoretically go after churches for this? And I think that their status is different. They're not a charitable organization. I don't think they have 501(c)(3) status. I think it's a different one. But it would be nice to get that rumor going to inspire some people. That wouldn't happen, but I don't know. It would be nice.
Would be.
All right. We got a couple minutes. Is Tyler with us?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Tyler Vasseur. He's a shop steward with the National Association of Letter Carriers, Branch 9. Going to walk us through what's been going on with the National Association of Letter Carriers and the deal that covers 200,000 people. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. I want to welcome back to the program Tyler Vasseur, shop steward with the National Association of Letter Carriers, Branch 9. Tyler, welcome back. I can't remember where we were in this process last time we spoke, but the first, to explain to everybody, will you just walk us through the different unions that exist if you are a postal worker?
Yeah, so first of all, Sam and Emma, thanks for having me back on. Last time I was on was International Workers' Day, May Day, so it's been a good 5 months. I'm a shop steward with the National Association of Letter Carriers. It represents over 200,000 working letter carriers. If you include retirees, it's about 280,000 members at the United States Postal Service. There's also the American Postal Workers Union, representing clerks, mechanics, janitors, and so on. Which is the second biggest. And then there's two more that are a little bit smaller. The Rural Carriers Union, they have their own union, and the Mail Handlers Union as well.
So you guys in the letter carriers, the National Association of Letter Carriers tend to be more urban oriented. Okay, so give us the history of the lack of contract you've had and what union leadership has done over the course of, I guess it's pretty close to 2 years now. A year and a half, at least, almost 2 years. A year and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we went, our tentative agreement was announced on October, 18th? And that was after negotiations started in February of 2023. Our current contract expired in May of 2023. So it was over 500 days without a new contract. And the entire time, last time we talked, we were talking about the fight for open bargaining and contract campaign resolution that NALC members were fighting for going into our convention. It was to try to push back against that. The entire time leadership, the point of that resolution was we argued we needed two basic things: transparency, some sort of updates, and a real contract campaign, some sort of public fight. Two things that most unions do some form of.
Yep.
Because we were fighting against the closed door negotiations that our leadership of NALC on a national level was going with. We weren't told anything about negotiations basically the entire time.
And so October 18th rolls around, and this is in an environment where we have seen unions extract very large pay increases. When was the last time? So your contract ends in May 2023. When was the last time you guys got a raise? Like, how long was that contract in effect? Just to give people a sense of like how much letter carriers must have fallen behind relative to inflation. And we should say letter carriers were pretty important during COVID. I'm not sure people remember that, but and maybe they don't. Maybe even the leadership of the union doesn't remember. But give us a sense of like when the last time you guys got a raise was.
Yeah, so we still get, I always forget, is that every 10 or 11 months we get a step increase, and that's built into our contracts. You get a certain percentage just already, it's already negotiated for. And so those still happened during this contract while this contract was being negotiated. But it's based off of an old formula. It's based off of the contract that was settled last time. And so it doesn't reflect the new realities of inflation. We also get cost of living adjustments. This was something that was won by NALC members out of the fights in the 70s in their own inflationary times. But those cost of living adjustments, which happen, which are adjusted according to inflation, they're not one-to-one with inflation. So first of all, you don't get those when a contract's being negotiated. And second of all, our COLAs, our cost of living adjustments, are not one-to-one with inflation. They're a fraction. They're a formula based off of inflation. And then based on where you are in the steps, or where you are on the pay scale, you get a fraction of it. So those lower on the pay scale get a fraction of that fraction of inflation. And so basically what little increases we did get were based off of already built into the contract, based off of the last negotiated contract before this, all these rounds of inflation that hit us in the post-COVID era. And we didn't get any cost of living adjustments. But there's a really interesting article that came out that was based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics that showed of all the jobs they looked at, postal workers have fared the worst over the last 10 years. From 2013 to 2023, they said inflation averaged, was 31%. Postal workers' wages went up 18%. So we've taken a pay cut in the last 10 years as postal workers, if you account for inflation.
Can you explain a little bit more about cost of living adjustments? Because that was a key thing that was won during the UAW strike, and just like how much of a difference that would make in terms of the contract that you're looking to agree to.
Yeah, so without getting into the weeds too much, like I was saying, our cost of living adjustments were something that a lot of unions had and fought for, especially in the 60s and 70s, as inflation was picking up in the post-World War II era. In the 60s and 70s is when inflation really started picking up, especially in the late 70s. NALC won that in the 70s out of those battles and that organizing. Basically, it's like, we use a formula based off of inflation to say, okay, you get an extra, amount of money on top of the general wage increase, the percentage wage increase.
So if inflation is, let's say, 4%, the real important figure is how much is your cost of living increase? You would think if inflation's 4%, the cost of living increase should be 4% because your cost of living has increased by 4%. Therefore, yours should be 4%. But under the existing contract, it's what, like you get half that, a quarter of that?
It's about a half. And that is for those at the top of the pay scale. It's lower down on the pay scale. You get a fraction of that half. And so I remember just really quick, like on that point, I remember in 2022, I didn't know anything about how the COLAs worked. I was so excited. Everyone said, look at historic COLAs because inflation had been so high. I barely noticed a difference in my paycheck because I got a fraction of that percentage of inflation.
So the negotiations have been going on since February of 2023. And in October, they announced that the pay raise is going to be a whopping 1.3%.
That's right.
I mean, compare that to Boeing, right? Or compare like these recent contracts. What UPS even $7.50 an hour over 5 years. This is what 1.3% increases annually. Boeing 38% pay increases over 5 years in their contract. Like this is egregious.
Yeah,
and then
I think you could make the case. You could make the case that 1.3%. They could make the case that 1.3% is fine if our COLAs were 1-to-1 with inflation, because that at least would get us ahead of inflation. But as it stands, our diet COLAs, that's what we call it, the diet COLAs that we currently receive and the 1.3%, it amounts to a pay cut.
And Tyler, let me just correct you. It's not half, it's 0.4, which is retained in this contract. And again, that's the high end. And the only, I guess, like it eliminates 3 early wage steps, which I guess in some ways lengthens the time that you get actually some type of wage step. I mean, it depends on how that, what the timing is. I don't have that information. And it shortens the progression to top pay. It's not going to take you 13 and a half years to get that 0.4 COLA. It's going to take you 11 and a half years to get to that 0.4 COLA. So after 11 and a half years, you will be able to keep up with inflation by less than half. And
something like that.
So, I mean, here's what's amazing to me. In July of 2023, the union could have said, okay, we're going to go into binding arbitration. Like, nobody looking at this would say, oh, okay, it makes sense that you are only, like, as inflation goes up, you only get compensated for less than half of it and no pay raise. Like, how much worse could have binding arbitration been than what the union is now pitching to you?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons that the members are so angry. Well, first of all, just workers in this moment have heightened expectations. Inflation, I think, has been a driving force for workers to say, to sort of wake up and say, okay, what's going on here? We got to fight for more. I've got a union. This is what unions are for. Let's fight for wages to keep ahead of inflation. Then when, on top of that, you can say that in the abstract, but then you're seeing the UAW, you're seeing Boeing workers, you're seeing the longshoremen win record wage increases that haven't been seen in decades. And so then workers I think that was a big reason why the 1.3% was such a slap in the face to letter carriers, because they saw that from other unions.
I'm curious, about how you convince your fellow letter carriers to vote against this contract. And B, I'm curious how they have reacted to Donald Trump's election, because I could see people reacting like, we're lucky we have a job. Because, and I think, listen, if you're protected by the union, I don't know what Donald Trump's going to be able to do in terms of like cutting postal services. My guess is that they're going to do as much as they can. But I'm curious about how you argue about that and what the reaction has been from your fellow letter carriers.
Yeah. So I was hoping you get into some of these questions. So there was initially outrage online. All you saw was vote no. There's a lot of momentum, but that's confined, like to Facebook, Reddit. That also was conversations happening on the workroom floor. I'm a part of a reform group called Build a Fighting NALC. I'm the chair of the coordinating committee, and that kind of came out of the fight for open bargaining. Now we're, really fully into the fight for vote no, fighting for the right to strike, these sorts of things. What we're trying to say is that we can't rely on that initial momentum and anger alone. You have to actually get organized for a no vote. And so we had a vote no campaign launch. We had over 700 people in attendance, all letter carriers, alongside other forces in the reform effort, Concerned Letter Carriers and Mike Cariff, two different groups that are running for the 2026 national leadership elections. And so what we're trying to do is we've been able to get or help people organize parking lot meetings and rallies, vote no group photos. NALC branches have passed vote no resolutions. I've counted roughly 60 group photos, and that's just the people who took pictures of people getting together saying, we can't just rely on momentum. We actually have to organize a no vote, hand out flyers, talk to people at these meetings, that sort of thing. And so I think that's the biggest thing. I don't think we want to put any illusions in arbitration. Arbitration was put in place after the 1970 Wildcat strike in order to prevent strikes from happening. They said, "Oh, you don't need the right to strike. We've got arbitration." Right. And our union has fared well in arbitration. I think it's made out ahead on most of those arbitrations. But ultimately, I think in BFN and Build a Fighting NALC, we're fighting for the right to strike, because this is exactly the type of moment that you would need the right to strike. That being said, in the moment, we're saying organize the strongest no vote possible. We want 75%. We want 80%. We want 90% no vote. So that when it does go to arbitration, that sends a strong message. And then combine that with the need for some sort of public actions, rallies, getting media attention, winning over the public. These sorts of positive pressure and leverage plays a role in arbitration. So we're not just saying put it to arbitration and hope for the best. We're saying put up a fight. In terms of Trump getting elected, the Postal Service and letter carrier job is very reflective of the broader U.S. society, the broader working class. I would say at least half of postal workers voted for Trump. And so on one hand, you have a lot of postal workers who are emboldened by that, said, all right, in their mind, they got their guy in, let's vote no and fight for more. There's lots of people, lots of carriers who I know personally, who I'm friends with even, who voted for Trump and support a no vote and want to fight for more. On the other hand, there are letter carriers that are, I think rightfully so, fearful of what a Trump presidency poses for labor, for unions, for women, for Black people, and so because of all the potentials that could happen under a Trump presidency to attack living standards for working class people. And so we have an interesting role to play in trying to balance those things. I don't want to write off anyone's rightful fears, but we also don't want to alienate people who have in my opinion, have illusions in a Trump presidency and think that he's in there for working class people. I disagree with that.
Well, I guess by voting no, they can test that theory out, and that's good.
Exactly. And just on that thing too, that's something that national leadership, I think they know this is a bad contract. They're not out there saying they're out there saying we can't tell you how to vote, that you have to make that decision, but then they hide behind fear mongering, and they fear monger about postal finances, and they fear monger about arbitration.
I wanted to ask you about that postal finances.
Mm-hmm.
There was an $11 billion investment in 1-year Treasury bonds, which I don't know. Maybe that's a good idea or not. I'm not sophisticated enough to know, from a financial perspective, particularly of an entity that size, if it makes sense or not to tie up that. But it appears as if that was, it was basically put into the balance sheets to make it look like the Postal Service was running a bigger deficit than it is. And it's a 1-year investment. The Treasury bonds you're not going to lose any money off of that. And particularly with where inflation is now anyways, it's unlikely that, you're going to. So what's behind that? I mean, what do we have a sense of what the Postal Service's, I guess, operating deficit looks like?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know for a long time it was a function of a law that was passed during the Bush years where the Postal Service had to pre-fund 75 years out in advance the health care for people that presumably aren't even born yet, who become Postal Services. We should say is the only requirement that has ever existed for such a thing in public or private sector, probably maybe in the history of man and woman anywhere. And that was reversed in 2022 because it was just so outrageous. Mm-hmm. But where is the Postal Services, like, sort of, what are their finances looking like?
Yeah, so that pre-funding mandate, first of all, it was the postal workers unions that fought to get that pre-funding mandate repealed. That was the beginning of when the Postal Service really hit financial problems. That took away a lot of the losses, but it didn't take away all of the losses. That being said, there's a really big sort of effort and momentum underway where people say, okay, open the books. Let's take a look. Where are you putting this money? And that's not just what you already have, what you already put out publicly, but let's really dive into them. There's also in the 1970 Postal Reorganization Act, 1970 or 71, whatever, it came out of the 1970 strike. It was when USPS became USPS. There is laws in there that saying that pay and benefits need to be comparable to the private sector. And it says that postal finances are not relevant to having to provide pay and benefits comparable to the private sector to the workers. And so if we bring it to arbitration, that should be the first thing you say. These postal finances should not matter. If our own union leadership is going to do the job of management and fearmonger about postal finances, I think we need to look at the fact that, okay, why are we getting any raises at all if they're losing all this money? Why did management get all these raises? Why did DeJoy himself?
DeJoy got like a 20% bonus on his pay, which is pretty. It's actually maybe 22% bonus. That's pretty good for an enterprise that is supposedly so strapped that they can't provide anything more than a 1.3% raise for its workers.
I think that if management cannot manage their own finances, then I think we really have to look and maintain USPS as this quasi public-private entity. And we think that the Postal Service provides an important service to the public. As packages become more and more important, having a public postal service with universal service obligations and a relatively affordable service, it keeps prices down for Amazon, for UPS, for FedEx. If we think that is important and management can't manage their own finances, then I think we need to look in the fact that maybe the Postal Service should be publicly funded. I think that is these are the things that we should raise.
This is a good point, time to remind people. We do not pay for the Postal Service. The Postal Service pays for itself. Now, I think we had to provide loans at one point, again, because of that pre-funding mandate. But the Postal Service is self-supporting. And in some ways, like you mentioned, it's a subsidy for Amazon and UPS. They basically hitch a ride on the back of the infrastructure that the Postal Service has provided. Mm-hmm. But they don't have the universal obligations, or A, they don't have the universal obligations. B, to the extent that they do provide close to universal service, it comes at a very, very high price relative to the Postal Service. So in some ways, like, this is, and again, it's like you say, the finances of the Postal Service is pretty opaque, but from the outside, with a guy like Louis DeJoy and this movement to, sort of have the Postal Service provide, it's almost like providing the roads in terms of a logistics question for other companies. In this case, it's roads, and often it's the last mile, and often it's the skies. It looks like real classic neoliberalism. And I'm talking the kind that came out of like Mont Pelerin, where it's basically, we're going to use government to enrich industry in many ways. And it's going to come at the expense of those people who are actually working for this enterprise.
Yeah. Amazon would not have been able to grow at the rate and the speed and the intensity that it has grown at over the last decade without the Postal Service. When I started in 2018, it was USPS delivered around 50%. I think it was just under 50% of all Amazon packages. That was when I started in 2018. I'm sure it's lower now. Amazon is starting their own deliveries, whatever else. But without the USPS, Amazon would not have been able to grow. And like you said, it's a subsidy for private corporations to be able to grow. And then now they're looking now and then turn around and say, and look at how useless the Postal Service is. They can't even manage their own.
But that's what DeJoy wanted, right? I mean, isn't that always really what his mandate was? Like, he came from the private sector, and that was what we anticipated when Trump appointed him. And so I guess my question is we went over it a little earlier, but like, what was the reaction within other postal workers to DeJoy's tenure continuing under Biden? And like, did that contribute to some of what you were saying about some of the discontent and the split among other members of the union?
Yeah, so I mean, DeJoy was implemented. So Trump appoints the Postal Board of Governor members, who then appoint the Postmaster General. But so essentially, Trump appointed DeJoy back under his first term. That was right after the Trump administration commissioned a study that looked into the Postal Service and said, what do we do about the Postal Service? That study came back and said, privatize the Postal Service. Then they turned around and appointed DeJoy, and DeJoy is putting in his 10-year plan to ultimately close down neighborhood post offices in favor of mega centers out in the suburbs like UPS, like FedEx, like Amazon have, and basically trying to mimic the private industry when, again, it's the United States Postal Service. If you close down every neighborhood post office, then guess what? People aren't going to drive out to the suburbs. And if you live in a city, aren't going to drive out to the suburbs to go to the post office. They're just going to go to the UPS store down the street. And that's what we're, ultimately, I think it's a veiled attempt to set up the infrastructure for privatization without openly saying the P word out loud.
So, so Tyler, if I'm a letter carrier, I'm a member of this union, and I'm listening to you right now, or I'm a member of the public, which I happen to be, and am supportive of letter carriers getting better pay, what should I do in both those circumstances?
Yeah, so if you are a letter carrier, I would say get involved in the Vote No campaign first and foremost.
How do they do that?
I can plug in a meeting here in a second, but ultimately, I think you should join Build a Fighting NALC, the reform effort that is getting organized. Since we've launched the Vote No campaign in our website, hundreds and hundreds of letter carriers across the country have joined, saying, I want to join joined online, saying, I want to join VFN. I want to start a chapter in my area. We're starting to build chapters across the country. We want to launch officially as a rank and file reform caucus. We're fighting for we're fighting for a vote no to fight for more in this contract. We're fighting for the right to strike. We're fighting to transform this union. We had our launch campaign a couple weeks ago, but a good place to plug in. So first of all, you can go to fightingnalc.com. Build a Fighting NALC domain was taken. Whoever has that, we want it back, but go to fightingnalc.com. Click there you can sign up there to join. We're fighting for things like a $30 an hour starting wage, top pay comparable to UPS, ending mandatory overtime, 100% COLAs, not diet COLAs, an all career workforce, and the right to strike. a good place to, we're sort of a rank and file reform effort trying to get organized on the shop floors amongst the rank and file, but there are other forces in the reform effort, especially slates that are being formed to run for leadership specifically. An important one is CLC, the Concerned Letter Carriers. They're holding a meeting this Sunday at 3 p.m., November 24th at 3 p.m. Central Time. You can find that Zoom link. I can send it to you all if you'd be able to post that to register for that meeting. That'd be a great place to plug in and to be able to join the Vote No campaign for the home stretch. But ultimately, I would say get involved with BFN. If you agree with these things, if you want to fight for the right to strike, join us and help start a chapter in your area where we're getting organized on a much more serious basis.
Send us that link. We'll post it in the podcast and YouTube descriptions and at majority.fm. And for those of us who are not members of your union, what should we do?
Ultimately, what we've been arguing for is we're going to vote this thing down by the widest margin we can, and then we're going to, before it goes to arbitration, we want to do public rallies. We want to get out there. And so I would just say pay attention. There's very likely going to be a rally in your area. Join that rally. Get involved in that way. And I'm sure there'll be more calls to action and calls for solidarity coming out of that. And
thank your local postal carrier. Tell them you stand with them, and if they go on strike, if they reject this contract, you're gonna support them, and tell your friends that they should support them as well. Tyler Vasseur, thanks so much for your time. Like I say, we'll put all those links in the podcast and YouTube description. Shop Steward, National Association Letter Carriers, Branch 9. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half. Just a couple of IMs. Amazon wouldn't exist without the Postal Service. They exploited the USPS book rate back in the very beginning. Indeed.
The book stuff was very sort of smart because you're saying there's a smaller rate for books, Sam. Is that what that IMers alluded to? Yeah. And also books give a lot of information to a seller about the type of people buying the books. They're like, you can actually tell a lot about somebody about the type of books that they buy compared to like deodorant or something.
All right, folks. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, but you help the show survive and thrive. And it's going to be a challenge over the next 4 years. But we will hopefully all make it through. We will not capitulate to, the Trump administration, to any type of fascism that grows around these parts. We will not capitulate.
Me to cancel our flight to West Palm? I thought we were going there tomorrow just to make
sure.
Well,
we're doing that. We're doing that just to so that it's important to keep the open channels.
Or also clog the channels, as Sam usually does.
Look.
Enough.
There. I think we have been pretty consistent with the limitations of the Democratic Party and their failures. But we are going to stay engaged in this fight. There's going to be a DNC, a fight for the DNC chair. We're going to engage in that. We'll talk about it in the fun half, and we'll probably talk about it more coming up. But there is one vehicle for this, at least on a national level, to at least put us in a position to fight for the things that we want. And, we're going to pursue that. There's, and certainly, there are plenty of recriminations to go around, but the idea that you're, and there are people in the Democratic Party who want to blame the left because it's the easiest target always, even though there is absolutely zero evidence to support the assertion that the left of the party, that the progressives in the party did anything but work against a tide of decisions that range from, Jill Biden telling Joe, stay in the race 2 years ago, to, Joe Biden's campaign people saying, the weird thing seems mean. And Lynn Cheney, or Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney is might be a good idea. So there you go. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee. I've got a bag right here, actually. See this on the back? There's a number. And that number is 48879. And if you plug that in, or you can actually just use your phone and scan it, and you can see where it came from and how much Just Coffee paid for everybody involved in the process. And that for every single bag. Get the code. Oh, okay. And then enter the code. All right. Well, it's a little bit of a process, but go ahead. Emma, you talk. I'm going to check my code here.
On ESPN yesterday, we did a full recap of Week 11 in the NFL. Things are starting to get real. Some big wins for the Chargers, for the Seahawks, for the Steelers, for the Bills. Chiefs finally defeated this week, last week. So we went through all that, youtube.com/ESPN show.
Matt.
Tonight on Left Reckoning, Ryan Grimm talking about sort of actually continuing the narrative of his books. We Got People and the Squad to talk about where we are, say AOC's relationship to the movements, Tlaib's course over the past year, and Bowman and Bush's losses. So check that out. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning, live tonight on YouTube at 7 o'clock Eastern.
So this here, this bag came from Honduras. The roast type is dark. The roast date was in July of 2024, right at the end. International lot code, I'm not sure what that is, but the price per pound paid was $2.64. And then there's actually a PDF link to the contract that they sign with their farmers in Honduras. I mean, this is completely transparent. And it's also great coffee. And they're a co-op. And someone just said, next time you're trying to remember if it's Liz or Lynn, just pick the one and then say the opposite. And that's what I do every time. That's why I always get it wrong. Hopefully I'm not going to have to talk about them anymore. So unless she becomes a DNC chair.
Obviously, that's who I'm pulling
or
for.
on Morning Joe or something like that. They won't have her. They're too afraid. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll head into the fun half. 646-257-3920 is the number. You can IM us by picking up the app at majorityapp.com. It's free. Oh, Lizard Cheney. That's it.
You got it. You'll never make that mistake again.
I will never make that mistake again. Lizard Cheney. I don't know why it took so long. Thank you, Noah from Tampa. You can pick up the app at majorityapp.com. It's free, and you can IM the show if you're a member. But you can also use the app if you're not a member. All right. See you in the fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, and I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now, and I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second. Now let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is this?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? Oh, no sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports.
We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-3501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all, my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. We are back. Emma will be joining us in just a second. Hey, boy. Edward Gregorian. Sam, you said you were a half-empty nester. The true empty nestor is Matt Gaetz.
I've been making that joke.
Friday 12, at the risk of complicating things more, doesn't Matt Gaetz have a Lon Chaney vibe? Treaty Parsley. Can't agree with Matt on the deodorant point. It actually does tell you a lot about a person. It tells you a person would rather spread the fantasy that they don't stink rather than show the necessary moral fortitude to actually not stink. That's a decision of it or not. Matt's talking about the brand. It doesn't tell you much about the person.
Yeah, whether as if somebody's buying, say, books about the financial crisis or books about kids, or that tells you quite a lot about their domestic situation.
I have a feeling this could actually be a set piece for us. I'll wait for Emma to sit down for this. Incidentally, Mike from Chicago says Liz Cheney's middle name, Lynn.
So you were right either way.
Yep. But I've found it now. It's Lizard Cheney. That's the way I'm never going to have to say Liz. I don't say Lizard. I think her full name could be Lizard.
It could be. Well, why did that do it for you? Like, there's no relevance to...
Oh, no. It's a long-time theory that Dick Cheney was a lizard person. That predates any of this.
And also Lizard Rumsfeld, a member of our community.
But that wouldn't apply to Lynn because that he would have to pass the lizard stuff down by blood.
Whoa. How do you think lizards pass down lizardness?
I didn't know if Lynn, his wife, caught the lizard like gene, or if it was spread through touch or bodily fluids.
I'm saying Lizard Cheney is
hatched in eggs.
Okay, she was hatched in an egg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we could do a set piece on this and probably have a candidate at least once a week. But it's important to track so that you're aware of what's going on, who are capitulating. Many of those people will be Republicans. Some will be former Republicans. Some would be more or less Republicans, and there will be Democrats who also capitulate. Let's start with a Republican. Let's go back, and I know Emma played this clip last week, but this is Mark Wayne Mullen. He used to be in the House, right? And
yes, and
he was a House member before he was a senator.
He was a House member.
People may remember him going at it with, I guess it was Sean O'Brien of the Teamsters, and it almost came to blows, I guess, maybe around a year ago on the Senate floor.
They patched it up, though.
They patched it up, it appears. But this clip of Mark Wayne Mullen when he's talking about Matt Gaetz, when's this from?
October 2023.
Okay, so let's be clear. This is over an entire year ago. It's now November 2024. That means it's more than 12 months. It's 13 months probably. And here is Mark Wayne Mullen espousing the virtues of Matt Gaetz.
You got to think about this guy. This is a guy that the media didn't give a time of day to after he was accused of sleeping with an underage girl. And there's a reason why no one in the conference came and defended him, because we had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with. He'd brag about how he would crush ED medicine and chase it with an energy drink so he could go all night. This is obviously before he got married. And so when that accusation came out, no one defended him, and then no one on the media would give him a time of the day. All of a sudden he found fame because he opposed the Speaker of the House back in November. And he's always stayed there, and he was never going to leave until he got this last moment of fame by going after a motion to vacate.
Okay, I mean that sounds
not leave at all. Yeah.
No, that sounds like Mark Wayne Mullen doesn't have much respect for this guy. I think he's problematic. But that was back when he was a congressperson, right? And Mark Wayne Mullen now is a senator.
Oh, he was a senator then too.
Oh, was he then? Oh, he was referring back to his day as a House member. But as a senator, you remember, with great power comes great responsibility. My Uncle Ben told me. And here he is talking about that same guy.
I think the president wants a hammer at the DOJ, and he sees Matt Gaetz as a hammer, and all these other appointments. He's very confident in where they're at and can deliver the administration that he's wanting. His picks have been maybe unconventional, but we hired an unconventional president, and the American people wanted that. They don't want politics as usual. They want someone that's going to shake up Washington, D.C., and President Trump proved he could do that in 2016, and we've had great results with the economy that followed. The American people saw what happened underneath the Biden administration, and it went to I'm going to use good words here. It went to heck in a handbasket. And then we see where the American people said, we're tired of that. We want something different. So the American people want it to be shook up. And the president is maybe using some picks for these positions that's not conventional, but it's what the American people wanted. I think.
And now Matt Gaetz is just simply unconventional.
Yeah. Shake it up, like, he shakes in his Adderall in with his
Red Bull,
his Viagra.
I want to be sure I don't say the word hell in public, because as I'm discussing Donald Trump's cabinet, which has multiple members of who have been accused of everything from sexual assault to rape. I want to just make sure I'm careful, because I don't want to offend anybody as I defend these unconventional picks. The kind that, I don't know, maybe put a roofie in someone's drink, at a conservative convention, or somebody who pays for sex with underage girls, or maybe somebody who hits on the nanny. Pictures. I mean, whatever. There it is.
I mean, everyone has their quirks and their hobbies. So I just don't understand why the liberal media is all on top of these multiple accused rapists being picked immediately right out the gate, especially those who have zero experience in this kind of role.
And they're all the same guy, like showing pictures, the revenge porn angle of like, if you don't have consent to show a picture of someone you took in an intimate situation, that is a crime. And yet multiple people that have been tapped by Trump are guilty of it.
There's 3 categories right now of people that he's nominated: accused rapists, Fox News hosts, and sometimes there's an overlap. And then the other one are just like absolute cranks that people think are either crazy or unserious or assets, like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr., who lost his mind and made news over the past few months for admitting to leaving a dead bear cub in Central Park. So this is the best this country has to offer, I'm being told, apparently.
It's unconventional. You're so conventional.
I know. I'm so basic.
Next up, we have 2 entries today in the Vichy category. You'll recall how adamant Joe Scarborough was. It's one thing if you vote for Donald Trump in 2016. Okay. It's another if you vote in 2020. But if you vote in 2024, there's no middle ground, says Joe Scarborough all the way back, I guess 6 months ago in April of 2024. Let's play this clip number 4.
She gets sick and tired of me trying to understand other people and being so pragmatic and trying to be like, I'm okay, you're okay. Now, where can we meet in the middle? La, la, la. On this question, we're past that. You can't meet. If they voted for Trump in 16, whatever. They voted for Trump in 20, they knew exactly what they were doing. If they vote for Donald Trump in 2024, and I've said it on my show, I'll say it here, they're knowingly voting for a fascist. They're voting for a racist. They're voting for somebody that wants to put this country 200 years in the back. And so I'm not trying to figure them out. I'm trying to figure out how we get people out who love democracy, who love freedom, who love the rights of all Americans, how to get them to the voting booth. Because that's how we save our country.
Okay.
Rousing.
That is very inspirational. This is a guy who is going to fight until the very last, well, not till the absolute end. I mean, he's going to fight, and maybe not until, like, this is a guy who's going to fight to the end of the first quarter, maybe halfway through the first quarter. In fact, here is Joe Scarborough yesterday, completely outraged at the how people could be so close-minded. And it's obviously something that's just happening on social media. This is fascinating.
And I will say also, I just want to say thank you, first of all, to everybody who was so kind last night, but also thank you. Willie, yesterday I saw for the first time what a massive disconnect there was between social media and the real world, because we were flooded with phone calls from people all day, literally around the world. Very positive, very supportive.
All right, I'm sorry. The real world. The real world that he lives in.
People that watch us and call our network.
Right. The real world where he said Biden should ignore the fact that he's sub 40% approval rating, doesn't matter, and he's 81, and a majority of the public, including like 80% of the base, says he should step aside for a new, fresh voice. They said that before the debate. They said that after the debate. They said the economy was doing well, and everyone believes it, and don't ignore the fact that people don't necessarily say their experience matches with these top line numbers. They were also insisting that the Never Trump movement, with bringing in all these Republicans into the party, was the thing that was going to save the party, and that focusing on democracy was the way to go. That's the real world that he lives in, aka the not real world. You have it reversed, you dummy. All the people that are calling you and saying how great it is that you went down and and broke bread with a guy that you had previously said it's fair to call him Hitler. That's not the people on social media. That's the real world. You're in the bubble. Crazy.
And let's be clear here. One of the reasons why we're singling out Joe Scarborough is that it was reported multiple times that Joe Biden listened to Joe Scarborough's show every morning, and it was basically his North Star. Yep. And so you can watch Joe Scarborough go out and give this adamant, like, you are out of your mind if you are voting for Donald Trump. And understand, this guy is the least sincere, most duplicitous, completely, I mean, this is just about proximity to power for him, period, end of story. And the idea that they're going to make this about journalism or whatnot, there was no interview that came out of that. You want to go down there and have a hostile interview with Donald Trump, or even a fawning one that we can see. But this is not thwarting the value of journalism for them to go down there and have access. And I also don't even buy the idea that they were afraid of being audited. You know what? I'm afraid of being audited. And I can assure you that I do not have the assets that Joe Scarborough does in which to deal with an audit. But it is a reality in this era. And this is about kissing up to power and then pretending. You want to talk about offline? Be like 2 days ago, they were probably saying, like, we need our own Joe Rogan. And now all of a sudden social media is a problem. But continue on with this. This is just fascinating. And all of those lackeys sitting around that table are just as culpable at this because they're sucking up to Joe Scarborough's power.
Because we were flooded with phone calls from people all day, literally around the world. Very positive, very supportive, going, understand what you do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But once in a while, I would get a text or a call from someone and go, oh, man, I hope you're doing okay. And I call him back and I go, well, Eddie Glaude was one of them. I go, Eddie, are you on Twitter? And he goes, I am. I go, okay, well, I'm not. So we've had a good day. Mika just had a wonderful event. That is fantastic.
Fantastic.
We're going to do all of us are going to do the best we can do, and we're all working towards a better.
I have absolutely no doubt that he is telling the truth. I am sure that he had a great day. I'm sure that almost every day is a great day for him.
A beautiful event.
I'm sure that if he puts his fingers in his ears and just keeps his eyes on the prize, that is proximity to power, maintaining their job, I'm sure everything will be fine for them. And, I have respect for Eddie Glaude. I will say, I mean, this is, and I suppose it's one thing to be sort of nice. Like, are you dealing with this blowback? I'm not even aware of it. I'm dealing with it so well that I don't even care. It's completely irrelevant. It is so irrelevant to me that actually Mika and I had a wonderful day. We went shopping. We had a nice time at the whatever it was. We went to, I don't know, Hermes or what I don't know. Where do people go?
They were in Palm Beach, I think is Mar-a-Lago in West Palm? That's probably such an insecurity for Trump. I don't really know. But long story short, they are so pathetic. And this is the second segment they've done on this stupid meeting with Donald Trump where they're focused on like, oh, we're okay. It's incredible how they've just this entire ecosystem is about like, they haven't gotten over how they were caught being all chummy with Trump prior to 2016. You remember all that scandal and how that was all recorded? And they've been living in that reality of like being aggressive against him on their own terms. But now they're insecure about the fact that they went too hard. And so they want to go back to pre-2016 levels. It's like, this is all about your career and you're somehow making it about the country.
And, there are, I don't know how many people who watch this program, watch MSNBC. Our demos are very, very different, I can assure you. I'm sure there are some, but, I know what the average age is of people who watch MSNBC. And I know what the average age of people who watch here are. And I know where the cohorts, how big the cohorts are. But it's worth it if you are an MSNBC viewer to write into MSNBC because there is value, I think, in MSNBC jettisoning some of these Republicans who are really not helpful to anything. Now, look, I don't think MSNBC brass thinks they have a strong ideological bent one way or another. But it's usually just like, where's the power at? Scarborough's ratings, if you were to check them, and I haven't checked them in ages, but his ratings aren't particularly good, but they do well in the Washington Beltway. This is the way that Washington talks to itself. And so for them, it's really about, advertising, and it's sort of like a lost leader type of situation, but it's worth criticizing it and criticizing everybody on there.
And I said this yesterday when we covered this, but there's no show, as you were alluding to, that's more to blame for the situation we're in than this. I mean, maybe the Joe Rogan Experience for normalizing Trump in the way that they did right before the election. But like, these guys were talking about how he's a threat to democracy, which is something that you and I earnestly believe. But when they go down and kiss the onion ring, as Matt referred to it yesterday regarding RFK, which was amazing, like they undercut that narrative immediately. And that's the thing that I just couldn't stand about, even the whole Biden ecosystem, which includes Morning Joe, because it's his favorite show, is that you can't make the legitimate case that democracy is on the ballot and that he's this existential threat when also acting in the way that they do. Or then when also acting in the way that Biden did, chummy with him at the White House. I care less about that and more about the fact that people, if it was so urgent, everyone was like, why are they putting up this feeble guy that I haven't heard from in 3 years up for re-election again? There was they couldn't communicate Trump's threat because the messenger left this leadership vacuum, and then you had media just completely covering it up for this period of time.
I think Joe
made it less
Scarborough
urgent.
Does appreciate that Trump is a threat to democracy. I think that's why he ran down there so quickly, because he just wants to be on the other side. He's like, democracy is gone. I'm going to be on the side of the fascists because that's the safer place to be. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, so the subtext of everything he's doing is consistent with that message. It's just that he's decided, I'm going to be on the other side. That's it. Like democracy's gone, and it's safer to be with the fascists.
So it would behoove future Democrats to kind of maybe ice out these freaks, because honestly, they're horrible messengers for what they're trying to do in terms of winning. And for all the talk about, like, we need a Joe Rogan on the left, there was a great write-up, and I forget who did it, about Hassan and someone, that the reporter is escaping me, but about how there is a new left media. It's just Democrats mostly ignore it and maybe go on some of those shows instead of speaking to like an audience of one. It's like it's Biden's Fox and Friends.
Well, the thing that comes up immediately is like, well, the problem with the Hassans or the majority reports is they're too critical of Democrats. And first of all, the right-wing media got that way because it was massively critical of Republicans. And so it's receptivity of the party to that criticism. But also, like 2020, I think maybe the media helped Democrats. The Democrats benefited from the Floyd protests because they were able to, frankly, co-opt them in a way that they weren't willing to do with Palestine. So they rejected it. And so how can you have a media that's like, Hassan's not, like, what was our position? Like, yes, it's better if the Democrats win, but also like stop harassing Chapel Roan because she has some reservations about giving a full endorsement to an administration that won't change course on Gaza.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the answer is for them to come on shows like this necessarily, but it's the idea that social media is not a place to go. I don't think they should have been afraid of going on Rogan's show because I just don't think that these people, when you assess their intelligence and the strength of their arguments, it is sometimes hard to see that they're there with people who are just completely nodding in agreement. And I have been in the rooms with these people. I have talked to these people, and they know nothing. They know nothing.
Wow.
They Tim Pool didn't have the ability to support positions that he's been espousing for years.
That was wild.
For years.
All she had to do was go on Rogan and say she supports full legalization of marijuana, which she outflanked Trump on.
Yeah. Talk about her celebrity pals. Rogan would love that.
I mean,
yeah. I mean, or any of the other stuff that they were proposing. Like, they didn't go to the places that they needed to go. And even in popular podcasts like Call Her Daddy, that was about abortion rights mostly, right?
I mean, it worked out, and there should have been. You should go on there. The idea that they're now Jennifer Palmieri, like a four-time loser now, is arguing that because they were intimidated by staffers. Grow up.
Sure,
that's
they were.
First off, grow up. But second off, that's a lie.
It's a lie. Yeah,
that's a lie.
That was the only thing the staffers wanted to put forward is, hey, never mind about having a Palestinian speak at the DNC. Just don't go on Rogan.
Yeah.
Right,
No,
exactly.
They are such liars. All that staff was a great majority. I don't have figures about this, but I'm sure 90% of the staff that they had built out were already people that had signed up to reelect Joe Biden because it was a campaign for her that was 107 days old. So I have a hard time believing that the people that were okay with the genocide are then going to be like so mad about her going on Rogan. All these left-wing staffers. The campaign was Biden's campaign that she took over, so it had all of the same people that were of Biden's political persuasion already there. It's such a ridiculous, and it's not the reason she lost either. But it is just like another CYA.
No, I don't think it is. But lastly, let's just cap off this segment about Joe Scarborough. When this is number 5, when Nikki Haley says that you have absolutely no spine and you're a capitulator. Can we put this up?
It's just a tweet, yeah.
It's just a tweet. Number 5.
Let's be clear.
Yeah, here it is.
Joe and Mika, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Nikki Haley is up there going, let's be clear, Joe and Mika didn't suddenly see the light. They saw their ratings. They realized they needed Trump for their survival.
Hey, that's you, Nikki.
God. I mean, yeah.
Nikki's now pretending that she didn't want a cabinet pick or whatever.
Glass
She's saying,
houses.
I withdrew my name from consideration. She wanted so desperately for Trump to include her in her campaign conversations because they were genuinely worried about the female vote. And it turns out he won a majority of white women again. But Haley was trying to sound the alarm, and she said publicly that he had shut her out since June and they hadn't spoken. So she was already trying to suck up to power in the same way Scarborough is. They're the exact same person.
I think the kids would say game respects a game. Wouldn't that basically be a description of that? Where she understands exactly what they're going through. Oh, did Palmieri recant that Rogan story on Twitter? Oh, good. I'm sure
I think she came back and was like, "Oh, sorry, I may have jumped the gun on this. It might have been a scheduling problem or something like that."
I might have just sort of elaborated one of my pre-existing beliefs. Instead of like the actual fact of the matter. I apologize after getting pushback.
Eric Adams, travel agent. What happened to Biden's national rent control that he rolled out days before dropping out? She included that on her issues page, as far as I know. My understanding is that she also supported that. They did not run on those things. They didn't run on any of it. I mean, they were there. Nicola, I mean, the real answer is for us to build worker power that can threaten them. Dems can win without that, but real progressive policy can't.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's talk about, let's do something that's fun. Can we do something fun? Oh, should we do Dana Bash? That's not really fun per se.
Because I mean, she's crazy, and what she's saying is there, and I love Code Pink, but I don't know if we should be like going up to her in the synagogue. I don't know if that's the best tactic.
I mean, I wouldn't do it in a synagogue. I think there's probably better places to do it, frankly. But
unless they're selling West Bank land, then you can do it.
Yeah. Right.
Let's talk about briefly the DNC for a moment. This is happening at the DNC. The DNC union has come out. This is number 13. Saying that the way that the workers there are being treated is a complete betrayal of party values. Democratic National Committee facing fallout by short-sighted mismanagement by senior leadership. Starting Wednesday night, permanent employees were notified of their termination effective Friday with no severance pay. DNC leadership refuses to disclose the DNC staff union the full extent of these layoffs and whether additional cuts are planned. These cuts go far beyond typical campaign turnover and impact employees who were previously told their positions would be retained after the election. Jamie Harrison and Executive Director Sam Cornell refused to address their staff face-to-face and have offered no explanation for how these cuts were decided. And this is despite record-breaking fundraising. DNC failed to provide any financial support to those who have tirelessly served the Democratic Party and its mission. Unlike the Harris-Walz campaign, which provided 3 weeks of severance to its staff, DNC senior leadership was chosen to leave loyal staff scrambling to cover rent, medical expenses, and childcare costs. Jamie Harrison was always a joker. I mean, just even like...
It's crazy.
I just remember this guy, and I don't like Nate Silver, but the idea that he's spending all his time on Twitter arguing with Nate Silver in the most juvenile way, whatever it was, 3 weeks before an election. Dude, if you don't have something more important to do 3 weeks out from an election than to get into a weird personality Twitter fight with Nate Silver, then, I mean... Kamala Harris should have won by 100 points in that instance. She should have gotten whatever it is, 400 electoral votes. I mean, just pathetic.
Can I just read some of Jamie Harrison's clients when he was a lobbyist? And this is just in alphabetical order. The American Coalition for Clean Coal Energy, Bank of America, Berkshire Hathaway, Boeing, BP, let's see, General Motors, that's fine one, I guess, Google Inc., Lockheed Martin, Michelin, National Mining Association. This is just a corporate hack, and it should be a scandal that he had the position that he did. 100%. And it's insane that how incompetent he is. Because I expect people with that track record to be complete psychopaths, like American Psycho type thing. He's arguing with not only Nate Silver, but people with 150 followers about whether the Republicans could stop Harris from being put on top of the ballot, just making things up.
He was retweeting Mueller, She Wrote, which is a Blue Anon crazy crank Democratic account. I mean, really crazy stuff.
But I mean, the bottom line is just you got to have something more important to do. I'm sorry. Yeah. My theory of this failure really does come down to just incompetence all around, with these people. And it is an incompetence born out of an ideology, I think, because so much of this mentality comes from the corporate world where the bottom line is, how do I cover my ass? And my ass is not just confined to my ass. My ass is also is those in my orbit who will support my ass. And we will all nod with each other. And if we can make it through this, despite our endeavor failing, we can spin this in such a way. I mean, you see this across the board, right? And it's this corporate culture. To the extent that ideology comes in here, it is that these people come from a corporate culture. They have been trained to protect their ass at all costs. The final, the bottom line is not the mission of the company or the long-term health of the company. It is basically how much value can I extract out of this endeavor. And so this is Democratic consultants who are going to go up on TV more. This is, using algorithms. This is, we're going to spend, we're going to pay $1 million for a singer to come, because I got news for you. That $1 million that goes to whoever it is, whatever singer at the concert is, there's somebody in between there too, who's getting a cut of that. Yeah. So, I mean, this is all this corporate mentality is, I think, really the death knell for just on a competence level. Yes. Just on a sheer competence level. And Right now, they are floating, and it's just fascinating. Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel was Barack Obama's chief of staff. He was also a congressional leader, then mayor of Chicago after he was with Obama's administration. When he was congressional leader, he was in charge of the congressional, the Democratic, the DCCC. And he chose only people who could fundraise for themselves. Like, he shut out Tim Walz back at the time. Like it was all just get wealthy people to run for Congress. And the only thing that got him that helped with Congress in 2006 was nothing that he had done. It was Mark Foley, a congressman who had hit on young pages, and it was clear that the Republican leadership knew about it. One of whom, to be fair, Denny Hastert, actually went to jail for pedophilia following his tenure as Speaker of the House as a Republican. But they all knew about it, and this is what ultimately doomed the Republicans in 2006. Emanuel then became chief of staff for administration. There were 1,000 statewide seats that were lost, whether it was like in the assemblies, in senates, in statewide elections across the country under the Obama administration. Obama won twice, but everybody else lost big time, which is why we had a deficit of leaders, frankly, because so many of them gotten taken out. Some guy who's going to run for, comptroller or secretary of state or, someone who's going to be lieutenant governor, they all lose. Because
not Walz. Speaking of that example earlier, though,
except for Walz,
Walz hung on in spite of this kind of leadership by Emanuel. Which I gotta say, this Harrison leadership is a continuation of that ideology.
It's the same. He's the same profile.
But I just didn't want to move past like that part. Just to make this point is that he became party chair in 2020. This was and he was from the South Carolina Democratic Party. This was when Biden moved the order of the primaries to benefit him, to foreclose the opportunity really for there to be a challenge by making South Carolina first. So this was the same. And he never won. Jamie Harrison lost that Senate race. He's never won anything. And then catapults because of Biden's influence. And it's the same trickle down to chair of the Democratic Party. And this is what we see the results are. So
Emanuel has now been floated by David Axelrod, which is just,
insane.
Flabbergasting. The American Prospect just came out with a story today that Emanuel, who is currently the U.S. ambassador to Japan, apparently has been very adept at monetizing that position. He made multiple six-figure trades at highly opportune moments in the U.S.-Japanese trade relations, it appears. Daniel Boguslaw at the American Prospect writes, among the millions of dollars of stock trades Emanuel conducted between 2021 and 2024 while serving as ambassador, one purchase jumps out. On September 29, 2023, Emanuel bought between $250,000 and $500,000 worth of stocks in CoreWeave, a leading AI cloud computing service. Oh, that was very smart of him. Emanuel's purchase took place one day before the Japanese government announced a $320 million subsidy to Micron Technology to manufacture storage components that are essential to the NVIDIA chips, which CoreWeave relies on for its AI computation services. Wow, that is just foresight.
Wow.
But CoreWeave is not the only financial action that Emanuel has fit between his official duties in Japan. He also purchased between $100,000 and $250,000 worth of Ocean stock on March 8th, 2024, before the close of the firm's Series B raise. The Chicago-based data analytics company CEO Chris Gladwin traveled to Japan in October on trade delegation mission to meet with counterparts in Tokyo to discuss strengthening economic cooperation between the state of Illinois and Japan. At the end of July, Rahm also purchased between $50,000 and $100,000 worth of stock in Monroe Capital, Chicago-based middle market lender that specializes in collateralized debt obligations. Have you heard of collateralized debt obligations? Because if you were,
those are great.
They basically were the epicenter of the financial meltdown in 2008.
I mean, what's the chances lightning's going to strike twice about credit default swaps?
Look, there are multiple candidates who are jumping into this DNC race. Right now, one of them is from the DFL. That's the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party, Ken Martin. He's the chair there. I don't know much about him. The other is Martin O'Malley. And despite the fact that Martin O'Malley has been the chair of the Social Security Administration, the idea that he's abandoning that post when every single hand on deck should be focused on protecting that makes me a little side-eyed at Martin O'Malley. Plus, I don't particularly remember anything from his run in 2016, except for introducing the idea that the primary was rigged. He was the first one to say that.
His name out there.
Yeah. And then there's others floated. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, also a Wall Streeter. There is one name that has been floated. Apparently, the press says he is seriously considering it. I should tell you that I know this person. I knew them at Air America. He was, before he was at a top post at Move On and Avaz, and before he was the Wisconsin Democratic Party chair, he was one of Al Franken's lead producers. And I can tell you right now, like, I remember walking into Al Franken's office and looking up at this massive grid on the wall that had every show plotted out for a month. Not every single slot was filled, but they had basically planned this. And I just looked around. I'm like, who did this? And it was Wickler. He was a young kid at that time. That was, 20 years ago. And I remember saying to him, like, are there any more of you where you came from? And that's how we got former producer Josh Orton on the program, who then went on to work for Feingold, work for Harry Reid, and work for Bernie Sanders, and then Labor Department. So I can tell you that, Wickler has been incredibly successful in Wisconsin. It was the closest of the swing states this year. Tammy Baldwin was on the endangered list. He was
Harris overperformed in Wisconsin relative to Biden in 2020, which is shocking given the result.
This is a state that both has like rural voters and urban voters, has white voters and black voters, has colleges and just sort of like just a wide range of people. And he also, I mean, this was the epicenter of what the Koch brothers were doing just 13 years ago with Scott Walker. And Wisconsin has turned around about as much as any state possible in that context. They won a really crucial Supreme Court, Wisconsin Supreme Court race a couple years back. His record is good. You want somebody who's going to win. This is the guy. This is not a person who's come from like a corporate background. As far as I can tell, he hasn't worked in any corporate background. I mean, Air America, I would not call. I mean,
you wouldn't call it that, but that's a good thing.
Not really. Although there were some lessons. But
he's a really, I don't know if he's formally announced, right? Like Ken Martin has. Ken Martin is I think, getting ahead of it a little. So, I mean, Wickler, based on what you're saying, sounds phenomenal. But Ken Martin from Minnesota is also another good option. It's basically, it needs to be one of these two guys based on the candidates that we have right now, because Emmanuel would be a disaster, obviously. But Minnesota Democratic Party or DFL, all of the stuff that we thought was really exciting when Harris picked Walz, you can also owe that to Ken Martin as well, and like how they governed in Minnesota. And so those are the two people I think we need to be promoting. But like the fact that this corporate consulting class, the campaign that Harris and Walz ran was very centrist. But one thing I liked about both of them is that neither of them had ever worked in the private sector. They were basically, Harris was a prosecutor, a little different than Walz being a teacher and being in the military. But those things I still think are important. I like members of the Democratic Party who haven't worked in the private sector and who are more lifelong public servants in the real sense of the word. And
he's worked in the private sector, but it's coming from like one of these sort of like corporate lobbyist jobs or finance or stuff like this.
I missed who you said. Sorry, I missed who you said. What'd you say?
We don't want, it's not so much having worked in the private sector. He's worked in the private sector, I guess, to some extent, but it's not a corporate finance heavy.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Even with that, it's very different than the Rahm Emanuels and the Jamie Harrisons of the world. Like those are the kinds of, whether it be Wickler, Martin, but Wickler sounds phenomenal in particular. Just the idea of somebody who's very dedicated to the movement and to public service, as opposed to, I'm going to take some McKinsey gig or whatever. Like these are the folks we need to extricate from the party. And Jamie Harrison was a continued disaster that we returned to after the 2016 disaster and after the Rahm Emanuel disaster before that. So
it's crazy that he got placed in that position, just being a lobbyist. Like I don't understand how after 2016 that was allowed to happen.
He also lost handily in his own Senate race.
And that was against Lindsey Graham, right? And the whole thing I'm pretty sure that maybe people can correct me, but I'm fairly certain that was the classic case of Democrats hating a Republican, so giving whoever stood up against him a shit ton of money, and then it turns out he's a big freak. And so he got promoted after that.
Right.
Open up the phones. We'll take probably 2 calls. I don't want to exaggerate, but this is fun. This is really fun stuff. 646-257-3920 is the number. 646-257-3920 is the number. Rudy Giuliani surrendered a Mercedes-Benz that was owned by, who was it that owned it? Was it Candace Bergen or somebody like that? I don't know.
What?
Yeah, he had a Mercedes-Benz that was owned by somebody. I can't remember who owned it.
I'm double checking. I think it was Lauren Bacall.
Lauren Bacall, you're right. I'm sorry, Lauren Bacall. I knew it was a.
Sam confused his
Clark Gable,
deep throat or deep voiced female actresses.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
and
no, it's okay.
Emma flexing her knowledge of that.
I know Lauren Bacall.
And watches and a ring on Friday of last week to 2 Georgian election workers who successfully sued him for defamation. However, he's still refusing to turn over other stuff, including access to his New York City apartment, which, if I was them, I would basically open that up to New York City firefighters and first emergency responders, because when those apartments were available after 9/11, Giuliani used them basically to have a tryst. And so
I thought you were going to say that the fire department would have to fumigate the place, but
or
at the very least, just go through it with a black light.
The controlled blaze, I think, might be.
Yeah.
And here is Rudy Giuliani's spokesperson, Ted Goodman. Now we should say Rudy Giuliani, until this week, was represented by 2 other attorneys, but hours after they made a filing about a storage facility that supposedly the Giuliani couldn't access for some reason, the attorneys quit, citing a rule that allowed withdrawal based upon a client's behavior. The court filing suggested their deep disagreement with Giuliani's approach to the case, his lack of cooperation, and his insistence on a defense that is, quote, not warranted under existing law. And here is his spokesperson showing off the watches that are being sold off to pay down the settlement.
Trump polo and all.
So I'm at a FedEx in Florida, turning over all of Mayor Giuliani's watches and ring as required by a court order in the case involving 2 women election workers in Georgia. This right here, folks, this is the accumulation of 60 years of hard work. Many of these watches hold great sentimental value.
Just sentimental?
And he's being forced to turn all these over under court order. Again, the accumulation of 60 years of hard work, much of it dedicated public service, helping others.
For sure.
Right? As mayor of New York City, as U.S. Attorney to the Southern District of New York, as a Deputy Attorney General, as a person who comforted not just the nation, but the whole world following September 11th. This man attended hundreds of funerals for firefighters, police officers, first responders, and victims that day.
Just pause. This is a man. Can we just just for a moment, just keep the image up there? Because I want people, as he's listing off all of these wonderful things he did, the B-roll they're showing, essentially, over this voiceover are, I don't know, watches worth tens of thousands of dollars. Like
you're lowballing it, I think.
Okay, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. I have no idea. It completely escapes me how you could invest that kind of money in a watch.
Yeah, good
luck.
luck
The
getting
point
that back,
is
too.
like, as he did all of these wonderful things for the public service, how the F did he make enough money to get these watches? Because he sold off all of that stuff. He sold it all off. This is just, and they're so twisted, they don't realize it. Go ahead.
For firefighters, police officers, first responders, and victims that day. This is a man who demonstrated courage by running towards the flames. And now he's being forced
Pause
to turn
it for a
all this
second.
over
I should
under
also
court.
add, since we're talking about 9/11, that that Giuliani's top emergency person said we must put the HQ in Brooklyn, not downtown, right across the street from the Twin Towers. But he again, and this was an earlier tryst that he was having, cheating on the second wife with someone who I think was his cousin. He needed a crash pad, basically a bachelor pad. And so they said, let's put command and control in Tower 7 of the trade centers. So they did. And of course, it was not usable on that day because of the planes hitting the Twin Towers. Just an added little detail that people should keep in mind as we're extolling the value of Rudy Giuliani as we look at the enormous value of his watch collection.
And now he's being forced to turn all of this over under court order in an absolute bastardization of our justice system. I have to document this. What's happening is wrong, it's shameful, and we must restore the integrity of the U.S. justice system.
Or Rudy's watch drawer.
Okay, so what is so funny is I have been convinced, because I looked up this recently out of curiosity, like those Patek Philippe watches that are luxury items can go up to $400,000. They're $125K. But I knew that Derek, the menswear guy, would weigh in, and he basically says that the resale value of these watches is unfortunately going to be pretty low because at the end of the day, it looks like maybe Rudy cheaped out on his watches as well and went more for the flashy style than the collector's item value. So it'll still be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
My favorite is that his new attorney, again, the other attorneys basically said, we don't want to work for this guy because he's crooked. Told the judge that Giuliani's Joe DiMaggio jersey should be off limits because all wearing apparel is exempt by law from the turnover. But my guess is that jersey is framed on his wall.
Of course.
And he has never worn that.
He has to wear it in public in order to keep it.
Could you imagine if he got he's going to wear it in public?
Nothing underneath.
Nothing. No. Wear it in public. All your rye sweats from your morning double are going to get into it. And then can you imagine if he ruins the resale value of that Joe DiMaggio jersey by his hair dye staining it?
He's got some Patrick Ewing basketball shorts too.
That's even more dangerous for him.
Calling from a 475 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Joshua from Connecticut.
Joshua from Connecticut, what's on your mind? Got to be quick.
Okay, hopefully I can be quick. So I basically just wanted to call because I have some disagreements about what you guys have been saying about RFK. I think you guys are giving him way too much credit on the whole, like, Maha crap around the
how are we giving him credit?
pesticides. Oh, because this, like, there's a lot of misinformation going around about the kind of like pesticides and food additives that like these things are inherently harmful when we don't really have data for that. That's not actually true and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking of things like yellow dye and Skittles.
Yeah,
and
that's what I
stuff like-
mean.
Oh, you think that those are healthy for you?
Well, I mean, like some of the statements that people make about it are like,
Well,
oh, in
wait,
comparison to
you're
the
accusing
EU
us of like running cover for RFK, which is a
No,
pretty
I'm not
strong.
doing that. I'm just like, because a lot of people believe these things. I'm just like trying to like call in to dispel it.
Yeah, I mean, I am interested in RFK creating a wedge with the within the Trump administration, and I am far more interested in him passing regulations or attempting to pass regulations to say whatever, you can't put X, Y, or Z in foods, just because I want the precedent set that government can pass regulations. Because right now, let me tell you something. Honestly, like you may be right that it is unfair to, in some way, criticize whatever it is, benzopine, the yellow dye number 3. We may not be giving that a fair shake. But what I'm interested in, as this rising tide of fascism comes in, and this complete assault on government, I am interested in what's going to screw up the gears of that machine far more than I am in protecting the commercial value of this pesticide or that pesticide, or of this yellow dye or that yellow dye. I mean, there's no way that, one could argue that and it's really ultimately comes down to the calorie density, right? Like we have such garbage that we sell as food in terms of its calorie. I get that, but to be concerned about those things at this point is honestly like rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. I'm more concerned about the Titanic right now. And if throwing a chair off the side is going to somehow like slow how the thing is sinking, that's the calculation I'm making.
Well, that's kind of my point, is that that's not the right calculation to make, because there's also financial interests coming in the other direction. And like RFK's like whole policy initiative are also giving those financial interests the leeway to do whatever they want.
There is no doubt in my mind that everything that RFK is doing, well, maybe in his mind it's not the case, but ultimately it's driven by a profit motive. But we are in one of those instances where it is Mothra versus Godzilla, and them fighting is only good for us. And any move for him to say, let's say, for instance, like we shouldn't have pharmaceutical advertising. I tend to agree with that. Sure. Actually, I actually tend to agree with that. But what's even more important to me is that he's going to be setting a precedent that government regulation is important. And
he's not doing that, though. That's my point. He's not doing that. That's not what his goal is.
But Sam's saying
I don't
basically
know what his goal is, but I'm not promoting.
Effect.
I'm not promoting his anti-vax stuff. I'm saying that I'm taking this policy and I'm saying this policy is good. And if he is in a position and gets into that position based on that policy, at least publicly, arguing it, which he's come out with videos, I want to see a wedge within that coalition that they have built so that it destroys both of them. And I mean, well, I understand it's not like, some platonic version of like whether, we can have a debate as to like whether the efficacy of this dye is actually dangerous for you or not, is what you're interested in. But that's not what I'm interested in. Like we're in a different zone, and people have to start to become aware of this, that the things that you're protecting will not exist. They will not exist.
No, but that's exactly my point, is that RFK goes along with what they want to do.
I
to the
understand,
but
I am pushing the parts that's going
the same way.
I understand, but I am pushing the parts that are going to cause friction. We lost.
I mean, if it's just like you want to kind of deal with
that
like
fight.
destroying things, I guess that's helpful.
You understand? We
Maybe.
lost. We lost. We lost that fight.
Right.
People need to realize we lost. And the question is like, what can we do now that we've had our arms and legs chopped off from the ground? What can we do to slow their machine? And if saying that, promoting that pharmaceuticals should not advertise on television, or that yellow dye should be taken out of Skittles, somehow gets him, forces him to deliver that, or at least if he doesn't, that they'll pay some price. That's what I'm going to do. I understand that his agenda is not a laudable one. I'm just saying, hold him to his lies, if that's the way you want to conceive of it, so that it creates a wedge within the coalition that elected this guy. That's the point.
I mean, he's going to go and deregulate a lot of other
I got news for you. We're not capable of stopping him from doing whatever he's going to do. What we need to do,
I'm not saying that
is
you're
make it
agreeing
look
with
like
him and you
he's
think that he's good.
betraying.
I'm just making a point.
No, I understand.
No, it's going to be bad.
But you started this call by saying that we're defending RFK, and that is exactly
No, I said
not
that you
what we're
give
doing.
him too much credit.
I'm not giving him
what I'm
any
saying. I'm
credit.
just saying that you gave him too much
I'm not
credit.
giving him any credit. I am using him
There
to
needs to be
gum up
even
the
less
works.
than what you're giving him.
What?
Okay.
Yes, but I'm not giving him credit. I'm using him to gum up the works. People have to understand this dynamic. We have lost.
I just doubt the utility of that. That's my point.
Well, explain to me what
We
the
just don't have
utility
any-
of what you're
yeah.
talking about is.
Well, I mean, it's just what he's going is doing exactly what they want to do and undermining the administrative state. That's exactly his policy platform. So I don't understand how that's helpful for us.
None of it is.
Talking about government,
about agriculture.
If he's talking about government regulating corporations, that is the opposite of undermining the administrative state.
Well, not when you look at his policy proposals. The whole math stuff, it's like,
what is the policy proposal?
The US is actually,
what is the policy proposal? First off, I'm going by the videos that he puts out to his followers. And if he gets up there and says, with a stroke of a pen, we can get rid of the president and get rid of pharmaceutical advertising on television, I want his followers to
I think that's
believe
fine.
that's what's going to happen.
Good. I agree with that.
Okay. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, I just don't know if that's necessarily the means to get to that. And I think that,
Well, you tell me. What's your
showing
option?
that misinformation is bad is just a good thing. I'm not saying that it's your guys' fault. I'm not saying any of that.
No, I understand.
I'm not saying you're supporting
but
him.
What's your strategy?
I mean, it wasn't about a strategy call. So I was just kind of just.
We get what you're saying.
You claim that we're
not
defending RFK, and that is exactly not
No,
what we're
I didn't
doing.
mean to say it that way. If that's what you interpreted, I'm sorry. That's not my.
Totally
That's what you said.
understand. That is what you said. The point is just that, yes, it's going to be really bad. But as Sam has been saying, because this is the worst outcome that we could have anticipated, basically, there's going to be little cracks, right? And what Sam is trying to say is that now that we have lost, we have to look at where we can exploit the cracks. And so this isn't to downplay it. It's just to say, how can we be strategic in the face of such horror?
I will also say, do I think it's going to work? I don't know if anything's going to work. I would say, I think it's unlikely, but it's unlikely. But if we can make one person disillusioned with them, because somebody goes wait, we have the ability to regulate this stuff, and how come we're not doing it? Then it's Pyrrhic, but it's a small.
I mean, that we are. I mean, that's kind of the point. We are regulating these food additives and stuff. Compared to the EU, we actually ban a lot more food dyes than a lot of other countries. so it's just kind of these false assumptions about our regulatory industry.
Good. Let's have more
Is that
regulation.
true? Wait,
Let's
I just
teach
want to
people
underline
that regulation's important.
I have a question about that. I thought the EU was pretty much more severe about regulating things. I know one example, carrageenan, which I know somebody who's allergic to, and all of the science says actually it's fine for you. But this person is definitely allergic to it, and it's regulated to some extent in the EU, especially for newborns or whatever. It's not here. Now that's just one example. Maybe that impression is wrong, but what I see here is notionally the point, like RFK pointing to something that would require what I perspective is a more sort of controlled regulatory environment. Now, I don't think he's going to do it. I agree with you, caller, but I think you have to point to that because it is going to fail. And then what happens with all of that, like sort of pent up need to address the medical issues in our country? So I don't think approaching them with too much skepticism or actually saying, hey, this thing you're concerned about is actually safe. Like, I think that needs to be done very carefully and in a broader context where you're acknowledging people's concerns.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I understand your guys' point. I would just say it would be helpful for you guys to have, like, a food scientist or immunologist or somebody who has relevant.
Well, we're definitely going to have immunologists
about these
on.
things.
I mean, we're going to definitely have immunologists on. But right now, all I'm doing is taking videos that he's put out to his followers and knowing that he's not going to do any of those things, and trying to promote the idea that that's what he says he's going to do and show that he's going to undermine that. It's not giving him credit. And, I think we can agree, like, it would be, I think we should ban pharmaceuticals from advertising. And more importantly, I want the American public to realize that we have the ability to do this, that it's okay to regulate. And then if we ever have an opportunity to have real regulators back in office, because they're going to clean everybody out. Like, I just think that, like, honestly, the thing that it's getting me so sort of ramped up about this is that I think there is a lack of understanding as to just like where we're headed here. They have thousands of resumes that they're going to fill on these agencies that are headed by people who are just showing their fealty to Trump. And the regulations that they're going to undermine and strip back, and the court has already done this. We need to go back to basics, and there is, which is where people understand that government is there to protect its people. The fact that his regulations are bad, we're going to get bad everything from this administration. I'm trying to pull out, the one thing I'm trying to pull out is to basically go back to like sort of like, the ABCs and explain to a population that voted for Trump that government regulation is important. It's legal, it's constitutional, it is a function of government. The government regulation can be bad at times. And certainly there are regulations that exist today that I don't agree with. But the fact is that like we need to get back to the point where people realize that's a function of government.
Right. Yeah, and if we can spin it in some sort of way that people have more faith in our regulatory agencies than not, I mean, that's all I'm concerned about. So if that works, then
I'm
hopefully
concerned that there's not going to be any regulatory agencies. I mean, in name only, frankly. But appreciate the call.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Didn't mean to get so exercised by it.
To be honest, it's just
a short fuse season, I think.
We have very few answers. We're trying to give you the answers we can. But there's just very little that we can do right now. I mean, I think eventually those special elections are going to matter a lot in the coming months about these vacancies that Donald Trump has handed over to his new UFC buddy, Mike Johnson. But outside of that, in the DNC chair race, we basically have to we have to take our, sit there and feel every part of it. There's no way out but through, unfortunately.
What was censoring sheep? Did you all see that Jon Stewart stole Matt and Sam's RFK joke from yesterday's from the show last night? What was it?
What was our joke yesterday?
I don't remember.
Did you say kiss the onion ring?
Swear to God.
If he said that,
no way.
If he did
That wasn't my joke.
we will be very angry, even though I love Jon Stewart.
All right.
You got to be more specific, because then we'll make a whole thing out of this if that's the case.
One more call. Calling from a 551 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
It's
Final
A-Square.
caller
Hi,
of the
Sam.
day. What's that?
Hi, Sam. Hi, Sam. Can you hear me? It's A Square.
Hey, Squared.
Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi. First, my condolences to you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, guys, for putting together that event. I was there. I left early, but hoping for better news. But
yeah.
It's just I have to say that I'm mostly between shock, horror, anger, disbelief. So as always, I thank you for being there. I know I don't have a lot of time, so I just wanted to, some good news first. I attended a meeting from a political action group here in the town where I live, and they handed out 4 roles for resisting authoritarian movements from Daniel Hunter. And I was making a plug for Majority Report. I'm like, you want to see a good interview with him? Tune in to Majority Report.
We're going to replay that sometime over the next month. Not sure when, but sometime over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
And I think, and it was very helpful because as people were venting, they were trying to focus everybody that was there, and there were about 100 people, which was very nice. But I'm not going to name the town where I live, but I live in a very progressive town. So here's the bad news. Only 50% of the people in my town voted. When I tell you progressive, I mean progressive. So when I think about the things that we need to do to mobilize the people, the disaffected people that we can mobilize, because, this persuasion, we're going to have to figure out who is truly persuadable here. That makes me very nervous. Some other information that may not be good news, and following that conversation about RFK, I attended a call from my bank. I think I mentioned this to Anna and Matt like a week ago, and I wanted to call to follow up for, their clients and for institutional investors. And the 2 things that they were worried about, of course, they were giddy about the tax breaks, the no regulations. The 2 things that put the fear of God in them was mass deportations and RFK, to the point that the presenter, a financial analyst, had a slide that said, if he gets put into this position, I will be doing this from an undisclosed location. So I find that interesting, heartening, but like you, Sam, I think all of these appointments will be approved. Perhaps RFK will be stopped. So I think part of what you guys are talking about, where to find the cracks, because the last time the malevolence was tempered by incompetence, I don't know this time.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that between right?
Yep, I agree with you. The incompetence, they don't have to be super competent to do this kind of destruction, but they certainly have had 2 or 3 years to learn from their mistakes and ramp up for it. And they're going to start. They're going to hit the ground running. And this is a Republican Party. There's not going to be never Trumpers. There's not going to be, John McCain. There's no Mavericks in this. That is over. They have learned their lesson.
None. And I will be mad too if Jon Stewart stole the Kiss the Onion ring joke.
Me
by
too.
The way. I will be very
going
upset.
to court.
One more quick thing.
Matt's gonna reverse all of what he had to say previously about libel
and intellectual property
and intellectual property. Sorry, keep going.
You gotta sue. Come on. So the other thing that was a little bit frightening is that the business community is trying to impress upon this administration to lean harder on apparently there's like an effort, and I don't know if you guys can research this. There's how are employers advancing workers' social and economic mobility? So there's some type of scoring that is done. I'm sorry I don't have all the details, but they're trying to impress upon the administration to lean harder on that and ask the companies. And it sounds to me like it's for show. What are you doing for your workers? Are you improving their socioeconomic conditions? Are you hiring people with, criminal records, right? What are you doing to lift workers socially? So a lot of the language that is going to give the impression that they're doing something for the working class. So hopefully in that area, they'll still be incompetent and they're not going to be able to message that they care about the working class, really, after all. And then finally, the executive orders for mass deportations. One of the analysts said that they know they have been issued and they think they're going to be released the day of the coronation or the day after. So not so many good news, but I wanted to share with you guys what I've learned so far. And some other day I will call and just rant and rave. How's that?
Appreciate it. A Squared, thanks for the call.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye. OBS. I'm very shy, but I'm taking the advice of getting to know your neighbors. I created a group chat for my apartment building to help network and or offer or ask for items and help, and a number of them are already excited about it. Solidarity is a way through this. Left is best. Good for you. That's awesome.
That's great. I mean, that's what really is necessary, as everybody's relationships gets more mediated and stuff like that. Is like, you can connect with people who are like-minded thousands of miles away, but connecting with people who are very close to you and concentrating that organization is really important.
Flumdinger. I think when that caller said you're giving RFK too much credit, they were saying that he doesn't actually intend to regulate anything. I don't know what his intentions are in that regard. But what we are trying to do is to create the expectation that he's going to, because that is where his value lies to the people who supported him and Donald Trump. And therefore, by setting up that expectation and them not fulfilling it, it undermines their movement. Do people understand that? And if he does do it, then it also undermines their ideology. But even getting them to expect that he can do it undermines their ideology. I don't know how else to express that. I work in the ingredient space. EU is way more regulated on all foodstuffs. Titanium dioxide has been banned for a while. The same with some artificial colors. Conniption, aren't you sad, Sam? We're not getting another Jeff Flake? All right, let's do this let's do this 16, and then I got to go. I'm doing a, Ben Wickler for Mike from Texas. Ben Wickler for DNC chair would be a nice change, but my fear is that without a tacit admission and a sobering up by the party about what's gone wrong and why a change of direction is needed, I'm afraid we'll end up with more of the same. Just look at how they reelected the House and Senate leaderships if nothing ever happened. Here's the thing, and I want, we're going to work on this. This mentality that there's a lesson to be learned by certain individuals, and the mass of whom make up the leadership, or whatever you want to call it. This is a fantasy. It doesn't work that way. Ben Wickler does not, I don't know. I don't know how I would describe Wickler's politics, because I think he's been in a position that is really more, sort of like partisan oriented. When he was at Avaz and Move On, it certainly was, I would say a full progressive. But just use him as an avatar. That position of power has power. They are going to clash with these other people who are not going to change. There is no learning. There was a Republican, autopsy after 2012. When they're like, we've got to welcome in immigrants and blah, blah, blah. And even Sean Hannity was saying it for months. And then the forces that didn't want to won. And and obviously 4 years later, Donald Trump emerges. And it wasn't because they had convinced somebody or they hadn't convinced somebody. They took power. That's it. There's no learning lessons here.
The thing that happened in 2016 was like the squad, and a bunch of people ran for politics with slightly better ideas than the things that animated Democrats to run for office in, say, the 90s or the 80s.
I mean, that's the bottom line. That's it. All right.
Got to be replaced.
Let's finish with some Christian nationalism. One of the challenges for the fascist right that has taken power or will be assuming power in the coming months is that people tend to recoil from the idea that they might be hold Nazi beliefs or they might be fascists, and people tend, not always, tend to recoil from the idea that they might be voting or supporting fascists or Nazis. So one of the challenges the Christian nationalist, white supremacist movement has is, how do we make people feel more comfortable with what we're doing? One tact could be, let us explain what we're doing and why it's not bad. The other is to try and make the words Nazi and fascist not really mean anything anymore. I give you Joel Webbin, Christian nationalist pastor.
And no, he's not Matt Walsh. If he was got a chemical peel that went too deep into his skin, or who was left out in the sun for
I think
a
he came
too
off
long.
the same assembly line.
He did, but one of the throwaways.
Here he is on the Right Response Ministries podcast.
If you are not being called a Nazi, then you are not pushing against the post-war consensus hard enough. You're not. If you're not being called a racist, then you probably at some level have given in to anti-white discrimination. At some level, you might not be doing it to the level of a Democrat, but at some level, you're probably doing that. If you're not being called anti-Semitic, then you are probably not pushing against Zionism, which is not biblical, not true to God's word, hard enough. If you're not being called a misogynist, then you are probably not teaching the clear principles of Scripture as it pertains to men and women. If you're not being called a bigot, then you are probably not frequently and courageously enough speaking about the horrors and the abomination of sodomy. If you are not...
the horrors of sodomy. The horrors.
I'm always talking about it.
I mean, honestly, it's amazing that the earth hasn't just split in two with all the sodomy that's going on.
You know what movie that really talked about the horrors of sodomy was Zack and Miri Make a Porno. Really captured the horrors of it.
I mean, I didn't watch that because I'm a godly person.
Let me, before we get too deep into this, let me just start the pool on the over-under when this guy is caught in some type of compromising situation, whether it involves like a Grindr profile or whether it's like, somebody underage. I mean, it's going to take a while. It could take 5 or 6 years. But what's the over under? Because I'm going to choose 6 years.
I think that's good. Probably 6, right?
Try to encourage people with posts and try to, help them.
I think he's encouraging people
this
with
is
posts.
really, really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
Because when they basically start saying you should be wearing the moniker racist, you should be wearing the moniker bigot, misogynist, anti-Semite, you should be wearing these monikers with a sense of pride. That's where it's basically, that's the turn, right? That's the turn where not only is it socially devalued to espouse these things, it gets to the point where it's actually socially valued to wear these monikers. I mean, it's pretty hilarious that he says in the post-World War world, you know, the term Nazi has become made to sound disparaging. I'm not sure if he knows which war it was that he was posting.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is really scary stuff.
I know.
We are in we are headed into some very dark times. And, you know, I mean, this is why, like, I think I got so triggered by someone saying, like, you're giving RFK too much credit. I mean, this is, you are, you know, like, people, we've got a sinking ship here. And I'm not worried that, like, the, you know, the seats don't match, the color coordination's not happening there. We need to do everything we can to push back on this stuff. And sometimes that's going to mean leveraging some of these people in a strategic way. And it's not like we're not articulating it. I mean, we don't have a lot of, I would imagine, virtually, you know, none who are supportive of any of this agenda. There may be some people who are like, who agree with me, like, you know, we shouldn't have pharmaceuticals, advertising or whatever it is. But the point is that we need to figure out ways of jamming up the works. And it's going to involve, you know, a wide range of tactics and whatnot. And, you know, we need to start thinking in that manner. You know, on some level, the protection of, like, you know, of norms, you know, we should not be arguing. We're at the point where, like, arguing over the efficacy, at least in the context of the Trump administration. I'm not talking about, you know, policy proposals that hopefully would be able to enact in 4 or 8 years or 12 years or whatever it's going to take. We just need to be arguing for, like, government has the right to regulate, right? Because this is the way they're coming after it. They're not going to come after it as, like, these are bad regulations. They're going to come back like, the government, this agency does not have the right to do this. And, you know, we need to be able to, like, sort of, like, argue for the functioning of government, because they're coming for government functions. People need to understand this. That was a fun half.
Yep.
Ramona Franken, the true horrors of sodomy are a sore bussy.
All right.
Tic-tac-toe. Steve Bannon said years ago, let them call you racist. Wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
All right. 2 more IMs. I bet that Xerox of Matt Walsh is going to be really excited when his wife gets her driver's license. Hopeful masochist. And recovery mode says, Sam, we need our own version of these guys on the left. Someone who will let people know that they don't have to fear being sodomized. Hopefully you can be that voice. Oh, there we go. All right, folks. We will see you tomorrow. Matt, Bradley, Emma, great job today. Folks, we will see you then.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. shifted in and